Hey guys, my name is Rochelle Topkis, and today I will be introducing the HyperDesk 1.0 project to you. Many individuals, such as freelancers, are working from home without a professional space to meet potential clients or to conduct efficient work. Similarly, many office buildings and populated work hubs are left with unfilled offices or desks, causing owners to lose potential earnings. So HyperDesk solves this problem by providing a platform for listing and renting office spaces. As for existing systems, HyperDesk is 1.0, so there's no other systems that are exactly like HyperDesk, but there are some similar ones, which are ShareDesk, LiquidDesk, and Desk Surfing, which are all platforms for listing and renting office spaces. However, they all have the main limitation of not providing users with the freedom of naming their own price. So HyperDesk will allow users to make offers for office spaces, and then the users that posted the office spaces are able to accept or decline these offers. So for our project management, we had a total of 7 sprints. We considered the ending of each sprint to be a milestone for us, and you can see here that one sprint cannot begin until the previous sprint has finished. So in the HyperDesk system, we implemented a total of 17 user stories. However, we still have some pending user stories that you can find in our final deliverable. For our use case model, we have 2 actors. We have the user and the member inherits all the use cases from the user. The first sequence diagram that I will be explaining to you is write a review. The actor in this use case is the member. The use case begins when the member enters a review and clicks submit. The review page then sends a post request to the review controller, which validates the form. If the form is valid, it creates a review, and the review model then inserts it into the repository, which is the database. The repository then returns back to the review model, and the review model returns back to the review controller. The review controller then asks the space model to update the review totals, and the space model finds a space in the database. The database then returns to the space model, and the space model then calculates the new average and the new total reviews. The space model then updates the space's average in the database, and the database returns to the space model, which then returns to the review controller. The review controller then renders the view space page. Our next sequence diagram is list office space. The actor here is once again the member. The use case begins when the member enters the info, which is the details about the office space, into the new listing page. Then the user clicks submit. The new listing page then makes a post request to the new listing controller, which validates the form. If the form is valid, the new listing controller creates a space, and the space model inserts it into the repository. The repository then returns the space to the space model, and then the space model returns the space to the new listing controller. The new listing controller then redirects back to the view space page. The last sequence diagram that I will be explaining is rent now. Once again, here the actor is the member. The use case begins when the member enters information and clicks submit. The rent now page then validates the form and notifies the user if they want to proceed. The user can click OK. The rent now page makes a post request to the rent now controller, which then creates a rented space. Then the rent model inserts it into the repository, which then returns back to the rent model and back to the rent now controller. The rent now controller tells the space model to update the availability, and the space model updates this in the repository. The repository then returns back to the space model, which then returns back to the rent now controller. The rent now controller processes the payment and also sends the user an email. Then the rent now controller sends a message back to the rent now page. The rent now page then notifies the user saying their transaction has been completed, and the member can click OK. For our system architecture, we are using the client server and model view controller architectural patterns. We have the server, and inside the server is the model, view, and controller. The controller acts as a middleman between the model and the view, and the model is the only one that can interact with the storage. The controller renders the views, and the browser is inside the client. For deployment, we are using MongoDB on the database server. we are using Mongoose as a middleware. On the web server, we have Node.js, Express handlebars, and on the client side, we have HTML5. Currently in our database, we have 9 tables. Our space table is the largest. You can see here that one space can have many reviews, one space can have many images, one space can have many offers, and one space can have many rented spaces. For security and privacy, first we are using email verification. So when a user registers, he or she must verify their email before they can log into the system. We give them 48 hours to do this. If they do not verify their email within 48 hours, then they will have to register again. We're also doing password encryption, which is done using bcrypt. It is a Node.js library. And lastly, we are to process payments, we are using the Stripe API. So instead of saving the credit card details in our database, we save a secured token that we are able to make charges to. Here we have our minimal class diagram. We have our top layer that has all of the views, our controllers that are all in the middle layer, and our models that are in the last layer. For example, here you can see the space model interacts with 7 of the controllers. So one of the main algorithms is updating the availability. Here I'm going to show you how to update the unavailable hours. This is for the rent now use case. We are storing the unavailable hours as an object with dates as the keys and an array of the unavailable hours as the values. So as you can see here, we have the date as a key, also here another date as a key, then as the value for this, we have an array of that date's unavailable hours, and same over here. So to update this availability, first we get the space by ID, then we get the unavailable hours for the space and save it in the hours in an hours variable. Then we check if that date already exists. If it does, we get the array that is the value, and we concatenate that array with the new hours array. We then set that new array to be with that key. If the date does not exist, then we simply create a new instance of it in the object by setting the date as the key and the hours as the value. Then we call space.update and update the hours in the database. Now I'm going to show you some of our test cases for a review in Office Space user story. First, this is the sunny day test case. The purpose is to test the functionality when the user reviews an Office Space with a star rating selected and a written review. The preconditions are that the user should have access to the application, the user should be logged into the system, and the user should be on the review page for an Office Space. The input is the user selects a star. Here, the user selects the 4th star, and the review, the user writes, "This Office Space was the best one I've ever rented." The expected output is that the user is redirected to the Office Space page and the review is visible. Also, the average rating should be updated and displayed. For the rainy day test case, the purpose is to test the functionality when the user attempts to leave a review without selecting a star rating. The precondition is that the user should have access to the application, the user should be logged into the system, and the user should be on the review page for an Office Space. The input is that the user writes the review, "This office was terrible, there was no Wi-Fi." But you can see that the user does not select a star. So, the expected output is that the system displays, "Please select a rating" to the user. To conclude, HyperDesk is a platform for listing and renting office spaces. Unlike existing systems, HyperDesk allows users to name their own price and also allows listers to select which offers to accept. Thank you.